Okay, welcome. We are live. This is a beginning of a new series that is in honor of the 50th anniversary of the 12 Pesukim. This is our first class, and we're going to talk about a little bit of the background of the 12 Pesukim, but also specifically about the first pasuk of the 12 Pesukim, about Torah Tziva Lanu. And this is going to focus on tools for parents. There are many classes happening right now. There's a joint effort between many organizations right now to generally give resources for 12 Pesukim, for teachers, for parents, for children, just in general. 12 Pesukim or something, even not for children, even for adults to connect to. So there's a lot of resources, thank God, right now, in conjunction with the 50th anniversary, with the Yovel, the Jubilee. But I want to focus here in this series on helping parents, how parents can connect to their children through the 12 Pesukim and to help their children to get the benefit of this amazing resource that the Rebbe made available to us in this generation. Okay, so let's start a little bit with a general background. Let's talk about how the 12 Pesukim emerged, because the 12 Pesukim became very much associated with Tzivah Hashem and the children's rallies, and there's an undeniable link between the 12 Pesukim and Tzivah Hashem and the children's rallies. But the 12 Pesukim, as mentioned earlier, actually started 50 years ago, before Tzivah Hashem, and actually started in the year 1976, in the spring of 1976, Tavshin Lamed Vav, in conjunction with Mivtza Chinuch. And what is fascinating to me about the Rebbe's education campaign is that the Rebbe himself said that Mivtza Chinuch is actually not a campaign to educate children, but a campaign to turn children into educators. Such a radical concept. And in fact, the Rebbe was apparently attacked for this radical stance. I don't know who commented, but the Rebbe responded to some detractors at the Farbrengen of Yud Beis Tammuz of that year, of Tavshin Lamed Vav. And the Rebbe said that someone was asking me how I could take the liberty to innovate such a novel idea of turning children into educators. Now, we know that the Rebbe's whole style of leadership, like Jonathan Sachs, Olav Shalom, famously said, that good leaders make followers, but great leaders make leaders. So the Rebbe was always turning everyone into a leader, and that's the whole concept of shlichus and shliach shel adam k'moisei. And children were no exception. The Rebbe saw children as leaders, and not just future leaders, but leaders right now, actively. So that doesn't really surprise us if we're familiar with the Rebbe's whole approach, that the Rebbe saw children as leaders. But apparently somebody was taken aback, and they said, that's really radical, that's really... they probably didn't even use a polite word like radical, like radical is a euphemism for it. But basically told the Rebbe that that's not a Torah concept. So the Rebbe responded publicly the Rebbe doesn't say who it was, but the Rebbe responded publicly, again, at the Yud Beis Tammuz Farbrengen of that year, and said, it's interesting that they're accusing me of making up new things when the accusation itself exposes the ignorance of those who are making the accusations. Because there's a famous precedent for turning children into educators. And in fact, the entire Torah only is available to us because children were educators at a crucial period in history. And that is, as our sages referred to it, Kama Gadol Ma'aseh Rabbi Chia. How great is the act, the deed of Rabbi Chia, of the Tana Rabbi Chia, what he did. And what did Rabbi Chia do? He saw that Torah was in danger, God forbid, of being forgotten. So I'm sure you know the children's book about it, catching the deer with the nets and skinning the deer and making parchment. At any rate, so Reb Chia got 5 children, 1 each to learn a chumash, and he got 6 children, 1 each to learn a seder of Mishnah. So he had 1 child each who was an expert in each of the 5 books of Moses, 1 child each who was an expert in one of the sections of the Mishnah, meaning you have the Torah Shebechsav, you have the Torah Shebal Peh, each one has his expertise, and then each of these children taught the others and then made them all experts in each one's respective area of expertise until they were able to replicate that, and then obviously they had exponential geometric growth, and that's how the Torah was preserved. So the Rebbe says this is not a new thing. I didn't make this up. And I would say this is very typical of the Rebbe's style, that when the Rebbe is most radical, the Rebbe is also the most traditional. When it's the newest, it's also the oldest. That's what timelessness means, something that's eternal. It seems so relevant that it must have been made up right now. And then you reflect on it and you realize, but it's ageless, it's timeless, it's been around forever. So this is a case in point, just an illustration of that turning children into educators might sound really innovative. And in a sense, it is innovative, I guess, because when no one else is doing it, then it takes an innovator to get people started doing that again. But the reality is it's not a novel concept. It's good old-fashioned Judaism, the way it was meant to be. Okay, so in that spirit, the Rebbe said that the 12 Pesukim, okay, I'm going to ask you a question. We all know there's 12 Pesukim. On what basis were these 12 Pesukim chosen? And we know that they're not all Pesukim. A pasuk literally means from Torah Shebechsav, from Tanakh, but they're not all Pesukim. They're actually Pesukim and Maimorei Chazal, sayings of the sages, and not all just from the classical sages, such as, Tanoim, Amoraim, Mishnah, Gemara, but 2 of the Pesukim from each group of 6, and we'll speak about the 2 groups of 6, are from Tanya, actually. Actually, if you want to break it down more specifically, you have 2 Pesukim, 2 sayings from the Tanoim Amoraim, and then 2 lines from Tanya in each group of 6. So actually, let me back up and explain the groups of 6. The 12 Pesukim were rolled out on 2 occasions. The first 6 Pesukim were the Rebbe introduced at the Rosh Chodesh Iyar Farbrengen of that year, Tavshin Lamed Vav. And in fact, it's interesting, when they only had 6 Pesukim, if you look at the pictures of Lag B'Omer that year, so when they put up they worked fast and they put up Pesukim posters, but there were only 6 posters. They only had the first 6 Pesukim. And then at Lag B'Omer itself, the Rebbe unveiled another 6 Pesukim with the same structure. Again, 2 actual verses from Torah Shebechsav, 2 lines from Mishnah or Gemara, and then 2 lines from Tanya. Same structure both times. At any rate, the question, on what basis did the Rebbe choose the 12 Pesukim? It's a great question, right? Are these the most fundamental concepts of Yiddishkeit? Are they the easiest concepts of Yiddishkeit, and therefore what you would teach a beginner? Are they the ones that children would be interested in the most? What basis were the 12 Pesukim chosen based on? So we don't have to guess, actually. The Rebbe said very clearly, and it's all in the spirit of children being educators. The Rebbe said very, very clearly, and I'm not going to sufficiently hide my frustration when I speak about this, and you can call me crazy. You could say that nobody ever heard of this. I encourage everybody that if you're interested in the Pesukim, you should go back to those 2 Farbrengens, Rosh Chodesh Iyar of Tavshin Lamed Vav and Lag B'Omer of Tavshin Lamed Vav. You should just look in the original, see exactly what the Rebbe himself said. But the Rebbe said very clearly the basis upon which the 12 Pesukim were chosen, and that is, these are the ideas that children will be able to teach. That was the whole concept. And in fact, not only did the Rebbe say that as like an idea, the Rebbe painted a picture with words. And I mean, it's very poignant for a chassid when you read this, and the Rebbe is describing a scene. And he's describing children are playing with each other. And one child is so excited about these ideas that he was taught that he starts sharing them with the other children. And the Rebbe explains the nature of a child is he loves to share what he knows, and he loves to tell everyone else what he knows, and he likes to be an authority, and that this capitalizes on the natural temperament of a child, and it gives children a healthy channel for being able to express themselves. And the Rebbe is describing this in vivid terms. So if you want to know what the purpose of the 12 Pesukim are, it's to give children a voice, to give children a confidence, pride, sense of authority, and an ability to share things with other children. That was the purpose of it. And the Pesukim were chosen on the basis of these were the ideas that children could understand well enough to give over. And to the extent that the Rebbe even said that, and this may disturb some people who have very particular ideas about the 12 Pesukim, the Rebbe actually said you could choose other Pesukim as long as they have the same content, the same inhalt. It's called andere Pesukim, the Rebbe said. Choose other Pesukim as long as they have this, they convey the same content, the same idea. What I'm trying to say to you is, it wasn't so much the words themselves, which is why I'm befuddled by the fact that say what you want about this. I think that after 50 years of the 12 Pesukim, if we want to really respect the 12 Pesukim and appreciate the 12 Pesukim, it's time that we use the 12 Pesukim fully the way that they were meant to be used, which is not just memorizing words and repeating words, although please understand I'm not, God forbid, nullifying the importance of that. Clearly, Amiras HaPesukim Bal Peh was valuable to the Rebbe because the Rebbe himself participated in repeating the Pesukim. You can see the Rebbe at the rallies. The Rebbe himself partook in Amiras HaPesukim Bal Peh, reciting the verses by heart. But that's the tip of the iceberg. It wasn't about memorizing the words. It was about internalizing the concepts. And that Rebbe described and shared his vision, his hope, his dream of what would happen with these Pesukim. In my humble assessment, we have not fully given that to the Rebbe yet. It is my hope that during this Yovel celebration of 12 Pesukim, we're going to start to do that. Okay? So, mothers and fathers, listen to me. We have to know what these Pesukim are saying, not just to memorize the words, although certainly if you don't know the Pesukim Bal Peh, and I just want to put out a little suggestion. I never heard anyone say this, but so I could be totally wrong, could be making stuff up. If you don't know the Pesukim Bal Peh, if you're an adult and you don't know the Pesukim Bal Peh, you should learn them. Maybe you didn't grow up Lubavitch. Maybe you're older than when the Pesukim were so popular. Maybe, I mean, if you're older than 50, you're older than the Pesukim. If you're older than 40, you're older than Tzivah Hashem. So, I'm 45. Learn the Pesukim Bal Peh. So that's one thing. But it's not enough just to know them Bal Peh. You have to know what they mean. So that's the purpose of this series, is that we as parents should know what the Pesukim mean, and then we could teach them to our children, and they could have a handle on what those Pesukim mean. And the indication that we're doing our job will be when you see the Rebbe's vision come true of kids playing together. This is how the Rebbe describes it, and they're so excited about the content that they've learned in the Pesukim that they're talking to their friends about it and explaining those ideas to them in their own words. Okay, in their own words. In their own words, okay? Not just repeating the words. All right. Yeah, fine. If you're still with me, let's talk about Torah Tziva Lanu. So there's a lot to be said about Torah Tziva Lanu, and the Rebbe elaborated through the years on that verse, both at the children's rallies as well as on other occasions. But I want to focus mostly on what the Rebbe said about Torah Tziva Lanu the first time, meaning Rish Chodesh Iyar Tavshin Lamed Vav. Because the Rebbe said very specific things about Torah Tziva Lanu, and it's not necessarily what you would expect. And it's not the same as what the Rebbe said on other occasions, although certainly on other occasions, whatever the Rebbe said is also relevant. But I want to go to the original when the Rebbe launched the 12 Pesukim, or at that time, 6 Pesukim. The main idea, I won't leave you hanging, I'll tell you right up front. The main idea that Rebbe said the Torah Tziva Lanu is meant to convey is the preciousness, the Teirkeit, the preciousness of Torah. And the Rebbe said preciousness is an idea that a child can relate to. It's just a marvel, actually, when the Rebbe explains a child's perspective, like how children see the world. It's, if I could just hit the pause button for a second and, just speak in human terms, not as a chassid about a Rebbe, but just, it's remarkable that somebody that age could think like a child, remember how a child feels and thinks, and especially someone who did not have his own biological children. To me, it's just remarkable. The Rebbe is able to vividly describe how children see the world. Now, of course, as a chassid, we know that the Rebbe, as a neshama klolus, relates to every single yid. And just like if someone was a scientist, they would relate to the Rebbe. And if someone was a doctor, if they were an artist, if they were a Rosh Hashiva, everyone related to the Rebbe, and because the Rebbe is connected to every single Jew. So we know that that's the way that Rebbe sees through a child's eyes, is because the Rebbe is already connected to every child. And, that's the spiritual explanation. But it is still astounding when you look at how the Rebbe doesn't talk about children from like a top-down authoritative way, like this is what children should think like. The Rebbe says this is how children do think, and let's channel that, let's harness that. So the Rebbe says children understand intuitively the concept of preciousness. And where do you see this? The Rebbe says a child has a favorite toy or a favorite doll. And if they would lose that doll, or if they would leave it behind somewhere, they would be very upset and they would cry, we have to go back, we have to go get it. If you've ever been a parent of a child who left their favorite stuffed animal or something at the grocery store, and you have to drive all the way back and you have to go find it, okay? That's the impulse that the Rebbe is telling us to tap into, and to connect the child to Torah from that approach. So Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, Mirosh Kilas Yankiv, means that we tell our child that there's something very, very precious. Hashem has this precious thing called Torah, and he gave it to you. And just like anything precious, we're so happy to have it. We want to make sure that we keep it. We want to take care of it. We don't want to let it go. And if you look, by the way, on the pasuk, Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe Mirosh Kilas Yankiv, what Rashi says, he says that it means that we want to hold on to it and not let it go. Okay, that's Pshuta Shel Mikra. That's how Rashi explains it. So that's the concept, preciousness. Now, obviously, we know that Torah Tziva Lanu, and the Rebbe mentions this at the Farbrengen, Torah Tziva Lanu, it says in Halacha, this is the first, it's originally a Gemara, it's a Gemara in Sukkah, but it's brought in Halacha, and Alter Rebbe Hilchos Talmud Torah, it's actually the first Halacha, that when a child begins to speak, when the child is beginning lidaber, to speak, and that's interesting also, by the way, what does it mean a child's beginning to speak? That you should teach him Torah Tziva Lanu. To speak means the child is beginning to have a voice. The child's beginning to be able to communicate. So when a child steps into even on a very simple elementary level, but the child steps into the mode of being a mashpia, where they are giving, they are conveying things. They're not just listening, they're talking. So we want to give them what to talk about. We want to give them the right ideas to communicate. Okay, again, this is the whole idea of children being set up to be communicators, teachers, leaders, mashpiyim. So we know that Torah Tziva Lanu, it says in Halacha that that's the first thing you should teach a child. But the Rebbe goes in deeper, like why that? Why that thing? Why is that concept so foundational that it's the first thing you should teach them? And there are many explanations, but the main explanation that Rebbe gives in the first Sicha, where the pasuk is introduced, is that this basically sets the tone for the child's whole value of Yiddishkeit. I think the word value is a very important word. You know, in English, the Rebbe said that sometimes different words in different languages have meanings that don't come across in other languages. Actually, the Rebbe said about we want Mashiach now, that it doesn't come across in other languages, even in Lashon Kodesh. So I think the word value in English has this is just my own thought. I just want to make sure you understand that I didn't say about the word value. I'm saying this is my own idea here. But the word value, value means like your principles, your morals, the big ideas that guide you in life. Like, what are your values? Torah values, right? Jewish values. But value also means something has worth. It's precious. It has a lot of value. And that's a foundational concept, or the foundational concept. That is the first foundation of all the foundations. If the 12 Pesukim are all foundational concepts, so Torah Tziva Lanu is like the foundation of the foundations. The child should form an attachment, a fondness for Torah. The child should feel warm toward Torah. The child should feel, also, it's not just feeling warm toward something, it's feeling warm toward something that's yours. It's mine, like that little toy that you're holding on to. You don't want to lose it. It's mine. And so that feeling of, I have something good, and celebrating that I have something that I like and I don't want to lose it, and I care for it and I take care of it. The Rebbe once described, not this Fabrengen, but in the Mems, that I was speaking about children dancing on Simchas Torah, and said the fact that children dance on Simchas Torah. Now you could say children are wild and they just like an excuse to run around. Yeah, you could say that. The Rebbe said that when a child dances on Simchas Torah, this just shows you how intuitive they are about how precious Torah is. That's what's coming out. They're excited about Torah. They're happy that they have the Torah, and they're dancing. Now, an adult might have already rationalized a lot of that away. Maybe they have guilt about how much they're learning or they're not learning, or maybe other cheshbonos that creep in. But a child has this like pure, unadulterated joy about Torah because there's something really special that I have, and I'm celebrating that, okay? So that's the main concept. And this is what we have to internalize, obviously, as parents in order to be able to convey it. But we should know that this is something that every child can grasp. And it's important to know that Rebbe said you don't have to know why something's precious in order to know that it's precious. That can come later. In fact, by necessity, it sort of does come later. The child can't intellectually wrap their head around what makes Torah so precious. But they can emotionally be connected to the idea that this is something precious, something cherished, something special. And I'm using a lot of synonyms because I'm trying to help you to, as parents, to internalize this idea. So you don't have to be able to explain to the child what makes Torah so special, why it's unique, why it's precious. We just have to be able to convey the fact that we are so grateful that we have this special, precious thing. And there are many different ways that we do that. I mentioned dancing on Simchas Torah. That I've mentioned lullabies. I wonder if we do that enough. That I've mentioned the lullaby, Torah is the best Torah, which literally means Torah is the best merchandise. The purpose of that lullaby is to introduce to the child in a sweet way. Torah is precious. Torah is the most valuable commodity. The Rebbe spoke about the story in the Yerushalmi about one of the Tanoim, about his mother brought him to the Beis Medrash, about Rabbi Shua ben Chananya. When he was a child, he was a baby, he couldn't understand anything, but his mother would bring him to the Beis Medrash to sort of give him a taste of the sweetness of Torah, the koil Torah, just the sound of Torah words. that I've mentioned also the Shir Malas cards. A lot of people, they do that, but it's, for protection. That Rebbe also brought out, it's not just for protection, it is that as well, but it's to expose the child to Torah and to associate it with something nice, something pleasant, something good, that the child should develop an affinity for Torah. And again, they're not able to learn Torah, so it's not like they appreciate it on an intellectual level, but just to form this positive emotional association with Torah. And as I'm saying this, I hope if you're a parent and you're listening to this, it's kind of clicking for you why this would be a foundation of education. Like, I hate to speak in negative ways, but okay, I'll put a timer on for 90 seconds. I'm going to speak negative for 90 seconds. If you're going to get triggered, you could fast forward. If somebody, God forbid, they start to depart from Yiddishkeit, God forbid, and you retrace, like, why did that happen? How did that happen? The narrative is always like, I had questions and, I had doubts, but the reality is it's always because of some negative emotional association. I mean, that's how it always happens. So we know that when someone has a negative emotional association with Torah, because, whether it's, God forbid, somebody who represents Torah mistreated them, or even Torah itself was weaponized and was introduced to them in a unloving way, right? But they had developed, God forbid, negative emotional associations with Torah, so that becomes like, God forbid, the undoing of everything, and then, God forbid, okay. End of the 90 seconds. I don't know if that was 90 seconds, but that was the negative. All right. That the good is always disproportionately greater than the not good. So think about it in positive terms. If somebody has positive emotional associations with Torah, if Torah makes them feel good, they're not even sure why. I don't know, when I hear words of Torah, when I see words of Torah, when I see a sefer Torah, I see images, I don't know, when I see Sfarim, Bias Mali Sfarim, these sensorial triggers, just, I feel good about it. This literally, and the Rebbe mentions this about the honey on the aleph base by the Hachnos L'Cheder. Again, it's just like positive emotional associations. I like this. This is a good thing. What do you like about it? I don't know. It doesn't matter yet. We're building a building. This is the foundation. Obviously, the child will come to learn and appreciate Torah and have an intellectual connection with Torah, but the foundation is the tayarkeit, the preciousness of it. And it's our job as parents to create all of those precious emotional associations of positivity and specialness and and like the Rebbe said, this is a midah that children already have naturally. They might be applying it to dolls and toys and candies because that's just what's easiest to apply it to automatically, but that's what chinuch is. We have to step in and take that natural trait and connect it to Torah. They wouldn't do that on their own, but they'll easily do it if we introduce it to them. And speaking of the fact that they'll easily do it if we introduce it to them, just want to mention another thing about Torah Tziva Lanu. Hanukkah is coming before you know it. I mean, it's not yet Shabbos Mevorchim Chedesh Kislev, not yet Kinnis HaShluchim. We're heading toward that in the next few days. But there's a Sikha from Hanukkah, Mem Gimel, which was also Shabbos Mevorchim Chedesh Tevis. Hanukkah, Shabbos Mevorchim Chedesh Tevis, Parshas Vayeshev. Anyways, the Rebbe spoke about Torah Tziva Lanu, and spoke about it in the context of the famous Gemara about the fetus in utero, how it learns the entire Torah. And the Rebbe spoke about the fact that when a child learns Torah, they're relearning Torah. And when a parent knows this will help the parent in their approach to the child. That you shouldn't feel like these are foreign ideas, and how am I going to get the child to understand this? But you should understand that these are intuitive ideas. It's a very important concept. They're never learning something brand new. they're discovering it, like literally discovering, they're uncovering. It's already there and it's already in them, but they need to rehear it to connect to it on a conscious level. And when you know that, it's not just an abstract idea, it's practical. When you educate from that perspective, it changes your approach to the child. It's not a struggle to introduce Torah concepts to a child. It's actually the most natural thing. You're activating their instincts. It's like it's already hardwired in there, and you're just sort of activating it. You know, imagine a musical genius who never had a piano, and one day you just give them the piano, and all of a sudden it's just the talent comes out. So the Rebbe says about this approach, I'm sharing this with you because the Rebbe says this specifically about something that educators and parents need to know. That if they will accept the fact that a child learning Torah is natural and it's not something you're imposing, it's not something foreign, it's not even something new. When you as a parent or an educator will understand that, what will happen, says the Rebbe, is it will give you a new confidence and an ease in conveying these concepts. And then the Rebbe says something which I think any chassid should take note of, which is that halavai, this approach would be followed, and if it would be followed, we would see extra hatzlacha in the education of our children. I mean, anytime the Rebbe says words like that halavai, this approach would be taken and we would see extra hatzlacha, that's something you got to perk up your ears and take note of. So again, this concept of Torah Tziva Lanu, and why is it connected to Torah Tziva Lanu? Because the Rebbe is saying in this Fabrengen that I was mentioning it in connection with the Gemara that says the child already learns the Torah before they're born. But the Rebbe says this is also conveyed by the concept of Torah Tziva Lanu. Torah Tziva Lanu means that it's not something you have to go out and get. You know, if you understand what is a Yerushah, Yerushah is something you're born with. So you don't have to go out and get it. It's not like a sale or even a gift where there's some type of a transaction that has to happen. Yerushah, you're born into it. You know, trust fund baby. You're born with it. So that's the concept that we as parents have to know, that our children were born with a native talent and proclivity for Torah. And this is not something that we should feel as a struggle. We should feel like it's the most natural thing. Okay, so those are just a few concepts that I wanted to share with you. I want to try to keep this simple and try to keep these classes semi-short. You know, try to keep it around a half an hour. That was at least how what I thought when I came into this. I think I went a little bit over that amount of time. And that's what we would like to do. Every couple of weeks, we'll take another one of the 12 Pesukim and we'll speak about what's the real concept that we as parents need to internalize so that we can teach that concept to our children the way that Rebbe introduced these concepts to us. Okay, thank you very, very much for tuning in, and we'll see you. We'll do another edition of this very soon, God willing, with Hashem's help.